Our next topic was brought to us by several in our team membership, and with many different perspectives. Ultimately, our friend Michael Libby approached the topic with a point of view that really brought together everything we've been hearing. Please join me in welcoming Michael.
We had some conversations, preparing for this about procedural storytelling, about using a computer to create the storylines or manage the storylines. How far away do you think we are from creation of a place like Westworld?
Well, I think in terms of the back-end technology, we're actually there. It has to do now with, the photorealism of the media and the advances in the animatronics. But in terms of, the IT aspect, it's happening now because the difference between open world video games like Grand Theft Auto and, Warcraft and things like that, the only difference between that and theme parks is building it, actually building it, constructing it. But those things are already happening in video games.
Can everybody hear me? Hi, this is the home stretch. Thanks for staying awake. I took a detour from themed entertainment this year, and I spent 6 months working for Microsoft. And in 2019, Microsoft invested $1 billion in this company called OpenAI. And they make products called GPT-3 and Dall-E. And that's what I was invited to work on for about 6 months. And it changed my perspective on the world. That may sound like an exaggeration, but I'm hoping by the end of this presentation you'll agree. So what is GPT-3? This is something you'll probably be hearing about more and more. GPT-3 is a language model, but it's a text interface where you're essentially communicating with OpenAI. You type in something, you query OpenAI, GPT-3, and it comes back with text. But that text is unlike any text you've seen a computer generate before because it is so human in nature. I have to admit, I thought the screen would be bigger, so I used a very small font. I'm going to show you a couple quick examples of GPT-3. And yeah, so it's good at several different things. It's good as summarization, extraction, translation, but it's also good at generation of content. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say I have writer's block, and I'm opening up an ice cream shop, and I want to come up with a good tagline for it, a good slogan. I'll just ask GPT-3, hey, write 3 different taglines for me for my ice cream shop. And sure enough, GPT-3 will come back, delicious ice cream for everyone, the best ice cream in town, and the perfect place to enjoy a cold treat. No human wrote that, GPT-3 wrote that. And then if I get a little more specific and I say, give me 3 slogans for an ice cream shop that are themed to the world of Harry Potter, well, it understands that too. The coolest ice cream in the wizarding world. A taste of Hogwarts. Butterbeer and ice cream? Yes, please. A computer wrote that. Wild. I'll give you another example of generation. It can be used as a brainstorming tool. Here I'm asking GPT-3 to brainstorm some ideas that combine VR and fitness. Okay, let's see what it comes up with. I'm not going to read all of these out loud, but you can see for yourself. It's coming up with relevant ideas that actually combine VR and fitness, and they're pretty good ideas, written by a computer. It can even do things like this. If you write a prompt and give it a few examples, convert movie titles into emoji. It knows how to do it. It's creepy stuff. And it can also be used not just for generation, but for conversation. So here we have a chatbot where this is the prompt input that somebody has written, and we're telling GPT-3 it's meant to be a conversational chatbot with the user, but it also needs to answer questions with sarcastic responses. So we're actually giving it a personality, this chatbot. And we give it a few examples just to help train it. But this is the prompt that we submit to GPT-3, and it ends with the example of me saying, hey, what time is it? And Marv responds, it's time for you to stop asking me questions and get a life. I say, do you treat everyone this way? No, just you. Why? I'm not sure. Maybe it's because you're so annoying. A computer wrote all of that. And how this conversational stuff works is, as I was advancing through those different lines of dialogue, we're actually feeding the whole text block, including the most recent entry, back into the machine, and then it's generating the next line. So line by line, it is continuing the conversation. And the way that these things work is that it has access to an incredible amount of data. Basically, it's querying the entire internet. And when you have that much data at your hands, you kind of know what humanity is all about. And let me advance. And so this is the first time, previously, if you wanted to talk to a computer, you would have to know how to code. You would have to act like the computer or learn how to communicate like a computer. But this is the first time that a computer is actually learning how to talk like a human. And this changes things. So all of a sudden, prompt engineering is the new engineering. You don't need to know how to code. You can just tell a computer what you want, either via text or by speech, your voice, that will then be translated into text. But all of a sudden, you can carry on a conversation with an AI that is far more advanced than Siri or Alexa. It is drawing on this data, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with autocomplete. It's really nothing more than an extremely advanced autocomplete, where it's looking one by one for essentially the next syllable in the progression. And it's saying, okay, well, I briefly queried all of the data in the world, and the most likely next syllable is this. And it's almost always right. And then it goes on to the next syllable, and the next syllable, and the next syllable. And these are the results that you get from GPT-3. So that's text to text. Let's talk about text to art. Zoe Thatcher did a little intro on that earlier today, did a great job. While I was at Microsoft, none of this stuff was really public. Some of it was, but the real moment happened when Dall-E Mini went semi-viral and casual users started using it and coming up with pretty incredible results. This is the Fresh Prince of Con-Air. This is Paddington Bear as a pizza delivery guy. And this, of course, is Fisher-Price My First Guillotine, which every child needs. Now that's Dall-E Mini. And it's actually working the exact same way. It's querying a massive database of images and saying, what is the most likely next pixel color after this one, based on all of the data in our data set? And how about the pixel after that, and the pixel after that? And because of the sheer volume of data, it's able to get it right. And it's really an incredible illusion. And it allows you to instantly create things like this. This was done by a head of CG who does not know how to code. Or this, UX designer, miniature sculpture of a cat, crystallized silver material. If you type that in, this is what you got. If you're a concept artist out there feeling a chill down your spine, I understand. And there are a lot of other tools. This is a technique. It is not a product that Microsoft owns exclusively. It is a new technique for creating content. And now there are several different types of this. The same prompt, behind the scenes of shooting the moon landing, comes up with 3 very different results with 3 different pieces of software. Because their algorithms work slightly differently, their data sets are different, so of course they come up with different results. But it goes beyond that. These things are advancing so rapidly that people are starting to figure out new techniques and new things you can do with this technology. This is something called in-painting. You have this picture of Johnny Depp. Let's say it's missing something, and you just want to add a parrot. Select an area, ask for a parrot, and there it is. You've all seen this painting, but who the heck is that person on the right? This is a technique called outpainting, where we're extending the bounds. What is the most likely thing to exist based on our data set outside the bounds of this picture? The prompt here is a Renaissance period countryside village, far away, painted in the style of Starry Night, Van Gogh. And sure enough, we can watch this play out. He submits that to Dall-E. Wait a few seconds. And there it is. And it gives you a few options to work with, too. It's pretty wild. So this changes art, and it changes illustration, and it changes everything. In fact, what does art mean anymore? And why even buy the art when you can just buy the prompt that makes the art? Like this company, Promptbase, that launched recently. Prompt engineering and writing is, in and of itself, an art form. And people learn how to do it better and write very detailed prompts. So you can go onto this marketplace and buy the prompt that creates the artwork, and therefore get the artwork by yourself. This is obviously a very disruptive technology, and not everyone is so thrilled with it. I'm going to play a little clip of Miyazaki reacting to seeing an AI animation.
こんなことをやっています。実際には
極めて不愉快ですよね。そんなに気持ち悪いものをやりたいなら勝手にやってればいいだけで、僕はこれを自分たちの仕事とつなげたいとは全然思いません。極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
どこへたどり着きたいですか。まあ人間が描くのと同じように絵を描く機械を作りたいんだ。はい。
地球最後の日が近いって感じですね。これは人間の方が自信がなくなってくるから。
So that's just one opinion. But this is a very polarizing technology. However, this is a quote that I found that I really like. Even those who are hostile to AI cannot avoid being impressed by the works they reject. They are irritated or repelled, but as the violence of their feeling shows, they are moved. You can't deny it. So we've talked about text-to-text, text-to-image. How is this going to impact our industry? I think that's what everyone ultimately is thinking here. When you have things like this, with a Twitter user who just entered in a prompt, immersive Disney vacation home, Little Thunder Mountain Resort, and it generates this artwork, I would go stay there. And I had to include a Miyazaki example. The prompt here if Studio Ghibli created a roller coaster theme park in the Arabian desert and the forests of Japan. That's one sentence generating this artwork. It's a very controversial topic in our industry. Christian Lachelle from BRC, who unfortunately is not here today, says, "I still sketch nearly every day. Thinking through the end of a pen is the way my creative mind works. And AI prompts are not going to replace this process anytime soon." Now, that's the perspective of an artist, a trained artist, a master artist. So here's another quote from Jeff Thatcher in the audience here somewhere. "Thanks to artificial intelligence, we are all designers now. It can also be seen as an enabling tool. Those who can't write, now they can write. Those who can't paint, now they can." Obviously, there are incredible ethical and legal implications for all of this. Not the least of which is, what the heck are these data sets? Where are they getting them? Is some of my stuff within this data set that is creating this content? There's an artist named Greg Rutowski. His name has been used 93,000 times. He is mentioned by name in these prompts because they want artwork that looks like it was drawn by him. For comparison, Michelangelo or Picasso have only been used about 2,000 times. And what's actually happening is the internet is scraping, excuse me, not the internet, the software is scraping images by Greg Rutowski and mashing them up and essentially photo bashing them pixel by pixel into original works of art that look like they were created by him. Now, he's still alive, but what about this artist, Kim Jung-gi, or Gi, sorry about the pronunciation. Very venerated animator, and he just recently passed away. And 2 days later, a fan trained a model to draw in his style. While we were at Microsoft working on this stuff, one of the most fascinating things that we found was that, anyone can sign up for GPT-3. You just go to the website. I encourage you all to do this. OpenAI.com, you just have to create an account. There's something there called the playground. All of those text examples that I showed you at the top of this presentation, those are all playground examples. Anyone can do that. But what we saw was people using that tool in ways that were not anticipated out in the real world. And I've been very careful in this presentation not to show or talk about anything I worked at while at Microsoft. Everything here is publicly available. But of course, in the words of William Gibson, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I am here to distribute it to all of you. It's such a revolutionary technology that use cases are being found every day and things are moving incredibly quickly. Here's a use case in archaeology. Just filling in the missing pieces of a puzzle. This is by a group called DeepMind Research. This is a piece of software called Stable Diffusion, which is image to image. You can type in a prompt and change some settings and transform one photo into the style of something else. And then we were just sitting at our desks at Microsoft, and we were seeing these things pop up. People were taking video, splicing it up into individual frames, and coming up with things like this. It's completely generated by an AI. It has applications for architecture. Again, the same process we used to keep feeding that text back on itself to continue the conversation is now being used with images. And it's creating some pretty wild art. This is another video that was processed through Stable Diffusion. Same process here. I mean, this is photoreal. This is a guy transforming his face into that of a monster. This is for a horror movie or something like that. And things are getting a little crazy. Here's an example of 2D to 3D. It takes that 2D sketch, has a data set of 2D sketches, 2D illustrations, and it's able to generate a 3D model from that sketch. And even the necklace that you see he's wearing in 2D connects in the back. This is a technique used by NVIDIA that they put out called NERF. Obviously an acronym, but you feed it a couple of images that you take of a site from different perspectives, and it fills in the rest. This was done with, you can see the input images up there. All of a sudden, you have a photorealistic 3D environment just from taking photos. Here's an example of text to sound effect. All of these sounds were generated by a computer. It can create synthetic speech. Some of you may have read recently in their most recent Obi-Wan Kenobi show on Disney+. James Earl Jones did not record any new lines of dialogue. They used all of his previous lines of dialogue as a data set to create synthetic new lines for Darth Vader with his permission. And now we're getting closer and closer to today. Just weeks ago, Facebook started showing, Meta started showing text to video. You just type in a prompt, and it can create a short video for you. Here's one, text to 3D object. You just tell it what you want, and it generates a 3D object for you, which, you know what, you can then 3D print and bring into the real world just by speaking it. And these creative use cases that are actually being done by people like you are sprouting up left and right every day. Things that I would never have thought to do, but somebody out there did. Now here's one where they're using audio to generate facial animation.
It's so dark. Where is it? I can't see it. I can't see anything, but I know it's there.
Those facial emotions, that expressivity, there was no animator there. That was entirely driven by only the audio input is able to be analyzed and determine what corresponding facial expression should match that. So going back to the top of the presentation, when I was talking about, we're here now, the 5 years ago flashback to, say, 2017, when I said we're here now, we have the technology now, I was talking about NPCs. And if you don't know what an NPC is, it's a non-player character in a video game. And for 20, 30 years, the experience of playing a video game and encountering an NPC involves branching text and different dialogue pathways and things like that. But younger kids now are realizing that that's just not really cutting it anymore. And it's even becoming sort of a meme. This trend has been popping up in recent weeks. NPC in real life, where the kids these days are actually essentially mocking the technology that video games used to employ for the characters that you interact with. Here's one example. So this isn't going to cut it anymore. That's not what talking to a real person is actually like. But now we can. We can take those text conversations and use speech to text to actually just have a voice exchange with somebody. And this does have value. Think about things like loneliness and depression. Having somebody that you can talk to about anything at any time and know that it's confidential, that inherently does have value. But we're here to talk about storytelling and how our industry can use these tools to tell new stories and new types of stories. Well, if you, again, it's all about crossing the streams and combining these tools. So let's say you want to create a story from a prompt and ask for it to spit out a sequence of maybe 12 scenes that tell a narrative story in text. Then you can use Dall-E to illustrate those 12 scenes. And all of a sudden you have a complete story, complete with storyboards. The prompt here is a buddy comedy about a father and daughter visiting Tokyo to find her missing mother, who mysteriously ran off. And this is just a portion of it, but you can see these are like pages of a book. It's a continuing story with storyboards. I'm noticing everyone has sort of gone silent. And yeah, it's scary stuff. It's scary stuff. But it is also a very exciting future. When you look at things like Turtle Talk and some of these interactive character experiences that we have, all of a sudden, this doesn't just change the experience, it changes the business model. And I'll get to that in a second. I want to spotlight and just give a quick shout out to D309 and the conversational team at Disney, Sarah Wolfeck and her whole team. This is a major step forward. It's being put in front of a regular audience, families, and generating speech that, you know, it's not necessarily that you don't know what you're going to get. You can write a prompt and get a response of dialogue, but you don't actually know what that response is going to be. And for writers writing content, that sounds risky. Like, what if D309 says something to a kid that's inappropriate? These are some of the issues that are still being figured out. In terms of storytelling, just take the traditional hero's journey as an example. 3-act structure with very specific moments, Joseph Campbell, all that stuff. And let's put that into our attractions. Let's use this to generate story arcs for all of our guests. It costs nothing. I'm going to show you one more project here. This is, oh, and also, I'll add, all of a sudden you can create infinite content, and that sort of changes the game. Take the new Star Tours, for example. I guess it's not so new anymore, but it has that branching pathway and all of those different media options. And they had to create multiples of media that most guests will not see. Guests will only see maybe a third of what's created. If you told that to a producer or a project manager, they'd immediately say, no. We just need to make media that all the guests can see because it's expensive. But what if it's not expensive? What if it costs pennies? And you can create infinite new content and experience and stories. I'm going to show you one more project. This is a project called Project Electric Sheep. Again, this was just done by a user, not somebody at a big company, just somebody working from home. And this is done in the Unity game engine. And the game asks you, hey, tell me about your dream last night. And you type in a prompt, and it creates a story world from that prompt with characters walking around in that story world, talking to you about things that relate to the prompt. And there's signage on the buildings that relate to the prompt. And so you're essentially generating a 3D world. I'm going to forward to the next slide so you can actually see this.
What do you wish to dream about?
It's an act of nature. We didn't create it. We can't control it. It'll last as long as the world lasts. The only thing we can do is wait it out. There's no other choice. It's dark for months on end. But spring is just around the corner. You can count on it.
Nobody wrote that. Nobody built that scene. Nobody 3D modeled that scene. Nobody designed that signage. All comes from 2 words, endless winter. But that is the brilliance of the prompt engineer who takes that input behind the curtain, if you will, plugs that input into a prompt that he or she has written to create that exploratory world. So the next step, as I said 5 years ago, is building it. The only difference is building it. What if we could feed that dialogue to in-park actors or even animatronic figures and drive their animation and their facial expressions with AI, just based on what they're saying? This changes the game, and it is a very valuable new tool where you can leave a park or leave an attraction and then pick up where your story left off the next time. This is sort of the dream, but it's always been cost prohibitive. Now it's not. The name of this presentation, The End of the Rainbow, comes from a book called Rainbow's End by Werner Vinge. And there's a character who's a very powerful, influential character there, named Mr. Rabbit. And it's not made explicitly clear at all in the book if Mr. Rabbit is a human or an artificial intelligence. And that's the point that I'm here to make. When you can't tell, well, does it really matter? Does it impact the guest experience? I would argue no. So these are the tools that are out there right now. Some of these are as recent as 4 days ago. And every day, people are experimenting with these AIs in different ways, combining them with different tools, and being really creative. It is a creative paintbrush, prompt engineering. The last thing that I'll end with is one more quote from Justin Cohn. It's not AI that will take your job. It's the other creative who knows how to use AI that will take your job. So that's my presentation. I think I'm out of time. I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.